All right, next I got with me the co-authors of Hidden Ball Trick, the baseball stats you never thought to look up or look for. Sorry, I don't know how to read the title of a book. Uh, I got Jeremy Frank and Jim Passon Jr. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm doing really well. Thank you for having us on.
Huh, no problem. I'm about, let's see what year I'm actually on. I'm on 1880, so I'm not that deep into this book, but so far I'm really liking it. I'm really enjoying it. And I was wondering, how did you guys even meet? Because you guys are from different parts of the country. There's a little bit of an age discrepancy between you guys.
There, I did not notice that. No, so I was in we met through Twitter. So I was just starting my account. Jim actually was he had more followers than I did when I started my account, and he was one of the people like gave me a helping hand. We both wrote for the same website. Like the first year I was on Twitter, like he didn't know that I was like 15 or whatever, however old I was at the time, and I didn't even care how old he was, but we just met through that. Eventually, like started talking more, talking baseball, talking whatever. Um, he came to Chicago last year. Met him in person. He's a great guy. Doesn't really matter that he's in Washington and I'm in Chicago because online nowadays you can pretty much do anything. Like we wrote a book without even seeing each other in person, like the entire process. So yeah, it's pretty cool how Twitter has, I guess, been the platform for all of that.
Yeah, I think I was probably sitting about 150 followers maybe when I met Jeremy. It wasn't much, but I had him by a hair at that point. But
Yeah, I was down in like the low 80s maybe.
yeah,
I was getting there though.
yeah, we
Yeah,
started working together on a project that Jeremy brought up back in the day when he was 15. He came up to me and wanted to know if we wanted to do a little bit of writing on a website that was ran by another guy. And gosh, what was that series called? Man,
Oh,
we
it
were
was the stats like that make every team look good or something like that. So like for each team, we'd have like a stat for their hitters and a stat for their pitchers. Like that was supposed to like make their team. Like if you didn't know anything about the baseball season, like oh look how good the Orioles are doing this season, but like you don't say anything bad about them, just like one positive thing from their team like that. Like oh Trey Mancini's the first player with like this amount of doubles, this amount of homers that like makes him seem like oh like a once in a lifetime like whatever. But it was really like you can do that just with any player. That's how we wrote a book. Is because you when you have so many numbers in front of you, you can find like patterns and stuff that we were able to do that with every team. We're like, I don't remember who the bad teams were when we started doing this, but you can find like the worst team in baseball and like, wow, look at how good their shortstop's doing on stealing third base this year or something like that. Just some random stuff like that, and it was really fun. And I guess that was kind of like a precursor to writing a book. I guess it was kind of just like a mini. It wasn't obviously 230 pages worth. It was just a couple of tweets for each team, but I guess you could say that that's kind of how it started us working together.
yeah. So, I was wondering, how did you guys even come up with the idea of a book? Like, who gave you the idea, and how did you guys pitch it to each other?
that guy.
Yeah, so I was actually talking to my buddy Ryan Spader. I don't know if you know him. He's pretty popular on Twitter, the Ace
Mhm.
of Spader. And he and his friend Kevin Reevey wrote a book similar to ours probably a year ago. Incredible Baseball Stats. I don't know what the subtitle is, but it was something to that extent. And they had an approach where they had like a chapter for each team, and like they looked at the best. Like they looked throughout like the history of baseball. It was probably 300-page book. Like they looked at like the best players from each team and like what they did that no one else did, stuff like that. Sort of a similar but different like way that we wrote it. So he gave me the idea to like look instead of looking at like a team thing because he did it. Like I wanted to write a book about baseball stats, but like how do you write a book about baseball stats? Like it's not really structured. Like you can't just like find random players and just like bullet point a stat about them and like okay we're moving on to the next player. But like the way that he did it with teams was really like ingenious. But he gave us the idea of like going year by year. So we started. So I asked Jim. I had written a couple. I think I'd written a couple, just like a rough drafts of like a couple what a couple sub chapters would look like. And I'm like, hey Jim, I cannot do this by myself. Do you want to help me out with this book? And like at the time, like we figured this probably wasn't actually going to happen. Like we're like, okay, we can work on this, like whatever. And it actually kind of took off. It took us only a few months to write it, but we realized that one book would be way too much to put every year of baseball in. So we decided to split up into three volumes. The first one of which goes till 1919. Second one is going to go from 1920 to 1968 or 1969, depending on what we decide is the more appropriate cutoff. And then the last one will go through 2019, so after the season's over. So I'm surprised that Jim actually took me up on the idea of writing a book, considering he has like a full-time job and everything, and I'm just like a high school kid who doesn't do any homework outside of school. But he found the time to help me write it, and I'm glad that that happened.
Yeah, that was a nice conversation that day. Yeah, I just popped up and, hey, man, you ever think about writing a book? I'm like, no. And he's all like, you want to? Yeah. And it was pretty quick. It was just like that. He's like, well, good. I think I got an approach that we should look at, and let's see if we can run with it. And ever since then, it's just we grinded really hard at the beginning of this to really get a layout, start
We were going
looking
like
for numbers.
it was crazy.
Yeah, and we started, and we were planning on doing a whole book with basically 144 years in it. And instead, we opted on doing it into 3 different books. But we started off with the old school numbers, and that's difficult. There's just really not that much to work with from 1876 and 1880 and all the way up through 1919, because we don't have game logs that we can go through. So we're looking more at season stats and whatnot. But it's been a challenge to get that book written, and we've loved every bit of it so far.
Yeah, I was wondering what made both of you like interested in looking at stats from 1880 and stuff like that, because usually like the typical fan, they'll look and they'll think, all right, like 2000, like you look at Barry Bonds, and like for me, I'll be like, all right, that's good enough for me. That's deep enough. 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. So we wanted to get all of baseball and like all of baseball history in it, and you can't say like baseball started in like 1901 because it didn't. There was the National League, which started in 1876, and even you can look at the National Association, which we had a little bit about, which actually started in 1871, which some people say is a major league and some people don't. And I think it's really interesting for the readers, especially because I feel like this will be the by far the least popular book of this series because honestly, no one cares about what happened before Babe Ruth. Like a lot of common fans, you ask them like, who's the first, like chronologically, who's the first baseball player you can think of? And it's Babe Ruth. No one knows. Maybe even Ty Cobb or Cy Young, but even Cy Young wasn't even playing in the 1880s. I don't think he started in the 90s, late 90s. But no one knows like anyone like Ross Barnes who played in 1876, or no one knows any of these guys. And like they can maybe name 1 or 2 players that played in the dead ball era. So I think that if you're looking to buy this book, if you're hesitant on buying this book because like, oh, I wouldn't know any of the players, like it wouldn't like appeal to me, it wouldn't connect with me, I think that's exactly the reason you would want to buy it, because I feel like you can definitely learn a lot. Jim and I learned a ton from writing this book. Like I would say, like honestly, 90% of the players, at least 90% of the players that we wrote about, I had never heard of probably 5 months ago. And I think that's the beauty. I'm not pretending to be an expert on the history of like the 19th century baseball, but I think that like looking through all the stats and just like combing through everything, finding some interesting stuff, I really learned a lot about it, and I feel like we condensed it into like a readable format for people to learn just as much as we did in a lot less time.
Yeah.
I've always been intrigued by the numbers. Baseball, something I always grew up with. I just didn't know this type of world where baseball stats were being displayed on Twitter even existed until a few years ago when I finally opened up a Twitter account because I'm old. And once I got in there and I saw the world that was opened up to me there, it was more and more every day that I enjoyed just looking for numbers that have already existed, comparing to numbers that are happening today, or even just looking at Barry Bonds from '04 and comparing that to anything else Babe Ruth from back in 23 or 24 or something like that. Just trying to make these comparisons. And so I've grown to look for the oddball stats and oddball numbers. So coming across this project has just made me expand a little bit. It's made me go into an era where I knew next to nothing. I didn't know all those people either. I didn't know the Will Whites of the world. I didn't really know Huey Jennings. A lot of Hall of Famers that you see on the list that I don't know anything about. Well, now I got a lot more information about it, and that's part of the process, or that's part of the best part about this book is being able to try to pass on some of the stuff that we were able to take in that surprised us and try to get that over to other people, but put it in a simple enough format because I'm no means an analytics guy. I'm old. I do the RBIs, the home runs, the runs. I see the simple stuff. I'm not very good with trying to determine the difference between F war and B war and warp and all that. I'm learning. I'm trying to catch up. But I think this book is perfect for somebody like me because it's a lot of the old school stats with a lot of comparisons to today.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, I started really following baseball in about '06, so 13 years, and just in that 13 years, you could just see the evolution of nowadays we see 32 looking like it's 40 in MLB and stuff like that. Just a lot of structural changes.
Yeah, I mean, baseball has certainly changed a ton. Just over like my lifetime, I was born in 2001, the year that Bonds hit 73 home runs. And if anyone even came close to the 1400 OPS he posted or whatever, like it would be like crazy because now everyone's paying so much attention to the statistics. Like it was crazy then. I wasn't or I wasn't like paying attention to baseball when I was like 0 years old. But it would be a lot crazier now with like the social media aspect. But it's crazy when you look back at all of the milestones, like not even just from before Babe Ruth, like the crazy numbers that like these guys are putting up, like complete game numbers. And then there was something, I don't remember what year it was, but it was one year where the Chicago White Stockings, their entire team just hit a bunch of home runs because the ground rules with their stadium changed. So everyone had like, I think out of like off the top of my head of the top 10 seasons in terms of home runs, like up to that point, their one team had like 6 or 7 of them. I'm just guessing, but it was something like that. And it's just crazy because like no one would the baseball historians, like the hardcore baseball historians all know that, but past them, like no one really knows or even care to like learn that because who cares about what happened before, like even before you were like born, like who cares? But I think that like the way that the approach to our books, I think the second and third books are going to be way more, I would say not interesting, but way more like easier to connect with the readers because even if you weren't alive from like 1920 to 1969 or whatever, you know the players because your dad was talking about them, your like grandparents were talking about them. You have baseball cards that like had these players. Like, Bob Gibson was like 68. You know, everyone knows about his 68 season, but no one knows about like whoever's 1884 season. So I think that it'll be way more easier, not only easier to read, not that this one is hard to read, but it would be way more easier to read and easier to write for us. There's gonna be a lot more content, hopefully, in the next 2 books as if the 230 pages we wrote on the Dead Ball era stats wasn't enough. But if we wrote it all in one book, it would probably be over 1,000 pages. Just on how much has happened in baseball history. It's really fun to write about.
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot, and I'm only about 20-something pages in. Like, I just read before you guys got on the call that baseball was 9 balls for a walk. Like, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, imagine if it was now. Tyler Chatwood could be one of the best pitchers in baseball. They still not for a walk. Or like just imagine how different it would be if there were 9 balls for a walk right now. Like be throwing off speed every single time because they wouldn't care if it missed because they have so many pitches to work with. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, Chris Sale would never walk anybody. Good grief.
His strikeout to walk ratio would not even register because he would have 0 walks. It would be infinite.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really love this book. In case you guys haven't seen it, Hidden Ball Trick. I love just the simplicity of the cover, just a ball and a hat.
Yeah, and if you look a little closely, a lot of people miss it. The bag kind of looks like a magic wand. That's what we were going for at least.
Oh yeah.
And then you got the magician's hat on the baseball. Just like it was just designed by one of my friends. We weren't going for something. We're gonna pay a cover designer thousands of dollars to make it because we don't have thousands of dollars to put into a book that we weren't sure if we were gonna make it back or not. So
Yeah.
I think it looks good. Some people don't think it looks good, but I think it looks fine. I think it gets the point across of what we're trying to. The real content is in between the covers, but yeah. I don't think it looks bad.
I think that's the best part about the cover is that it doesn't take away from the title and the content that's inside the book. The point of the book is inside of it. So we're not looking to be sharp and fancy on the outside. You know, I wish there was a saying like you don't judge a book by its cover or something like that.
Wow, that's brilliant, man. You should should say that to everyone.
I should come up with that. Yeah, it's just loaded on the inside, and I think that was the point of the cover was to try to keep it simple there because the inside's where all the good stuff's at. So
Yeah, I mean it's like heavy. Like you cannot like read this entire book cover to cover because there's just so much there to take in. Like I was like me and Jim are going through this after we had like done the rough draft, and like you can't edit or like proofread more than like a few years at a time because there's just so much going on, like so many numbers, so many words that like you got to make sure like are all okay, like from our perspective. And then when you're reading it, it's just hard to like process everything. So I think that's one of the, I mean, your money will last you a lot longer with these books than it would like a novel that you're trying to like get through because like you're on the edge of your seat. But like this one, you could read a couple of years a night or whatever, and it'll take you a little bit longer to read. But that's kind of the purpose of it, I would say.
Yeah, and then since you're releasing 2 more volumes of this, it gives you time in between just to digest what you've read. I mean, I've read a couple of chapters and I'm like, wow, my mind's blown. Now, when I read the rest of the 1880s tonight, I'm gonna just. It feels like I have to take a mental break just to recap what I just read, because
Yeah.
some of these just feel like video game numbers at this point.
Yeah, have you gotten to 1884 yet?
I didn't. I'm at 1880.
Okay, 1884, you're in for a treat. It's like 5 or 6 pages worth. It was probably one of the craziest years in baseball history, and no one even cares about it because it was 1884 and not 1984. But 1884, that year, if that year happened right now in baseball with like as many statistical like oddities that happened that year, like that'd be crazy. And the White Sox just turned a triple play. That's pretty cool.
How did you guys discuss like what year each one of you is gonna write? Because obviously there's a lot of time frame in between each volume. So how did you guys really go into that?
oh man, that was rough.
Yeah, it was.
It was availability at the beginning in a way. We started writing it. I think it was towards late November we started getting on this, and I was about ready to take a vacation and go visit some family back at home. So I was about ready to tie myself up for a couple of weeks. So we were basically grabbing whatever chapters we could work on by ourselves and just focusing on it. So while I was gone during that break, Jeremy had blasted away like 12 chapters that he worked on, and but they were not where he wanted them to be complete by no means. He's just looking, he wanted a fresh set of eyes on it that could see some more stuff. So in a way, basically that's how we handled the book was, okay, jump on a chapter that we haven't done yet, work on it, do the best you can with it, and then have the other guy come through and say, hey, I'm going to take a look at it with a fresh set of eyes, add to it, and see if we can strengthen the chapter. And then once we did that, we had a pretty good rough draft going by the time we finished all the way up through 1919. And then we went from there. We started going back and looking at our rough draft and trying to increase the data the information where we thought it was needed. Some chapters a little bit lighter than others. It just kept going from there. So in a way, we kind of picked out chapters, but in essence, we end up basically working on every chapter both of us did.
Yeah, originally we were gonna go. We had I had the genius idea to just like switch every other year. Like, oh, this is gonna be so organized. Like, I'll take the odd years, you take the even years. Like, it'll be perfect. It'll be done, and then like we'll look at the other ones. But like, it was a terrible idea because like one person can't find every single baseball. Not even 2 people can find everything single like interesting baseball stuff that happened here. But I would say that once we got over the fact that we couldn't just each take years ourselves, like we would start off that way, like the framework would be like by one person, but I would say like there's at least 3 stats in each chapter that came from each one of us. So it's not like one of us wrote everything in it. It's not like you can tell, like you can probably if you really looked close, you can tell the difference between the writing styles between me and Jim, and you can sort of see which ones like we each did just from like the way that we just like word stats. It's just like a weird thing that I don't know, it's just how it works. But yeah, like you won't find a consistent like style of writing throughout like one single year because neither of us like took a single year. Like I might have written 8 baseball stats for like 1891 or something, but then Jim would have done the same thing. Took 2 hours to look at 1891 and find anything that I missed. And yeah.
Now, is that like the typical time it took per year to look up, like 2 hours each?
It was probably a little bit more than that. It was probably like if we wanted to, we can get 1 year done per night, like one quality year done per night, but like that's if both of us happen to be free and like we're willing to, like I'd probably start a year at like maybe like 9 p.m. I wouldn't be like satisfied with it until like maybe like 1 a.m. Like it actually probably took longer than a couple of hours, but if you wanted to, like, we probably spent more than just the time, the initial time we spent writing it, because we went back and like we looked for more things. We probably went through the book 3 times looking for more things that we found. And we'd also, when we're looking for stats, like if we're looking for a stat for 1901 and we're like, oh, he's the first player to do it since like 1886, then we go back to 1886 and we put the same stat there because, and it wouldn't be done again until 1901. Just like a shortcut we took to add stats, and it definitely doesn't take away from the quality having the same stats in there, because you can really like tell how time passes through the book, and you can see like how long has it actually been since this thing had been done when you're reading through the book. Like, oh, it hadn't been done in 120 pages or something like that. Like it kind of flows that way.
Jeremy has such a grasp for the game and the stats and everything around it so well that it feels more like he's like the Billy Hamilton. He can run through the stats quicker than I can. I'm running around the bases like John Crook or Jason Giambi or something like that. For me, it takes me a while. I would say
significantly better though. If you gave like each of us like, if you told each of us to like write a chapter and give us like as much time because we need it, like his would be significantly better. But like if I really wanted to, I could probably find like I can probably get through like the stats of 1 year in like an hour, because like I'm just looking for like anything like. But the stats, like the really really good stats in this book that like were definitely really thought out. They were all Jim's. Like No, they definitely were. Like he'd spend like an hour just like writing one stat. I'm like, what are you doing? And then I like look at the stat. I'm like, holy crap, dude! Like, how did you find that? Or something like that. Like, it's just hard to explain. Like, because like a very few, like it's a very narrow like subset of like baseball stat community that like actually like tweets or whatever like writes about baseball stats. So like it's really hard for like anyone else to understand like what we're talking about when it comes to like looking for stats. But like the way Jim did it, like he was definitely like a lot slower. Not like that was a knock on him or anything, because his stats were like really like in depth, like really high quality stuff. So I could definitely get through probably 6-7 stats in the time it took him to do one, but his one stat would be the top of the page because it was the one that was the coolest one.
Yeah, so basically the book is 70% Jeremy.
Yeah, but 30% is all Jim. So like it evens. I wouldn't say that though. I feel like Jim definitely took at least 40-45% of stats. I wrote a lot of the introductions and stuff. I don't know. I feel like more comfortable as a writer, but yeah, I mean, it was pretty evenly divided. We each read through and did our stuff on each chapter, whether it was putting in like some minor stat like I would do that took me 20 seconds to write out, or the half an hour like 2 paragraphs like really cool interesting stat that Jim found. Like they're all in there.
What did you guys use to find these stats? I know you said Baseball Reference. Is there any other websites or like databases that you looked through?
Baseball Reference is our savior. We would not have been able to write this book without Baseball Reference. We would have found a way to do it, but it's just significantly easier like than like exporting like the entire database of like RetroSheet into like an Excel spreadsheet and having to like actually code your stuff through it. Like Baseball Reference is pretty much like all coded to the fact that you just need to like input the stuff you're looking for and you can find it pretty easily. You don't need to like actually write any of like the software or whatever you need to find for the code. So without Baseball Reference, the book would not even be out right now if we were even writing a book. It just makes it so easy to look for these stats, like the obscure, like when was the last player to have 20 homers but not hit 5 doubles? Like it would take me 20 seconds to look up right now on Baseball Reference, and I'm pretty sure it's Matt Olson anyways. But yeah, no, Baseball Reference saved our butts in this book. Like the only reason like my account exists on Twitter is because of Baseball Reference. I didn't use any other site for the first year of my account just because it was so easy to use. Like when you want to get like more in depth for like current stats, which we probably will use more towards the third book when it comes to like StatCast stuff. Like they don't have StatCast in the 1880s. They didn't have anything even close to that. They were like, oh yeah, that looks like a 75-mile-an-hour. Wait, did that thing curve? Was that a curveball? We should call that a curveball. And now like StatCast is like they have like spin rates and everything. Like that'll be coming like more into use like when we're writing our second, well not the second book, but the third book. But yeah, for the first book, most of the data we needed was available on Baseball Reference. There wasn't too much like advanced metrics we wanted to go through because you can't have advanced metrics when not all the data is complete for all the years back then.
Yeah, Baseball Reference. Yeah, I don't even know. It's the best money I spend every year. $36. Yeah.
So cheap, so worth it.
It's so.
I mean, yeah, I can do it from my phone. Like I literally have my laptop which I'm typing on, and I'm like all the stats were searched from my phone. Like I didn't use any I didn't use like SQL or something on my laptop to like write out some like brilliant code. I was like literally on my phone like typing at the same time Like it's really as easy. It was really as easy as that. Like the book wasn't that difficult to write. It was just time consuming. Like I would say the stats were there for someone to find. So I don't think we were the first to find them, but we were probably one of the first to put them in a book.
Speaking of random stats you found, I told Jim this, so I'll be interested to see how Jeremy reacts to this. I wanted to share my favorite random stat that I've read from you guys so far, and then I wanted to see what your guys' favorite stat was researching. So my favorite one that I've read so far, it's the second one in the book, so I dug very deep into this. In 1871, there was a 49-33 game and played under 4 hours, and that just blew my mind.
You know what? You're the second person that has said that. I asked one other person who got the book. I asked on Twitter, like, "Oh yeah, what was your favorite stat?" Like as a joke, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the one about the baseball game that was 49-33." I'm like really out of all the ones, like that was just like it wasn't even a stat. It was just like something that happened, and that's so funny that you brought it up. It's the same exact thing. I don't know if I have a specific favorite stat, like right off the top of my head. I'm glancing through this.
Yeah, that 49-33 game. I was actually at work today, and my wife and I work at the same. We work for the same business, but we have different sites that we work at. And one of our coworkers came to my place today, and he bought the book already. And that was the thing that he brought up too, was the 49-33 game. And,
we should write one book about that entire game. When we're done,
I guess.
Yeah, it seems to be a fan favorite.
The title, like 40. That's all I need.
That's the one that baffles them all. I don't know. I think my favorite in the book probably was the Will White stat, 1879, where he racked up over 200 strikeouts, had an ERA under 2, but only had like a winning percentage of .581 or something to that effect, if I remember correctly. Which was the lowest win percentage for a pitcher that had 200 plus strikeouts and an ERA under 2 until last year, and that's when Jacob deGrom came back and said, "That 139-year-old record, that's mine now." So
he also the worst batting average by a qualified player in MLB history. Same season, that pitcher, he hit 136, the worst ever by a hitter. And also, okay, I found a stat. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it was the one I was talking about earlier. So 1884, the Chicago White Stockings, they had the first player that had ever hit 20 home runs in a season, and they had 4 of them. So before 1884, no one had hit even 15 home runs. No one had hit 15 home runs. Like 15 home runs would have been like historical. And the White Stockings, they had this ground rule that they changed. I guess the ground rule doubles were changed to home runs for the one season because their fence was like 200 feet or something like that, where they would count as homers, and 4 guys hit over 20 homers, and no one else had even hit 15 in MLB history before that season. Like that's like the ultimate like cores, like 2,000 cores. It was like, yeah, like it was the White Stockings Stadium in 1884.
So they were the real murderers row back then.
Yeah, they had those 4. Well, actually, those 4 guys, and then this guy named. I'm reading out of my book right now. I do not have this off the top of my head. So those 4 guys, and then King Kelly, who also hit 13 home runs for that team, which would have been tied for third best ever, but it was actually topped by 4 of his teammates. Those 5 guys had 8 home runs on the road and 79 at home. To put into perspective how remarkably crazy that stadium was, it was just like they're hitting like the vast majority of their home runs at home. And they won 39-17 at home and 23-33 on the road. So there were 22 games above 500 at home and 10 games below on the road. So I guess they knew how the ground rules were, and they took advantage of it. So that was really interesting to me when I was writing it. I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, in that 1876 chapter you've already been through, there's a gem in there with the Cubs that I really like too, where the 6 of the top 8 batting averages in the league that year were all for the Chicago White Stockings.
Oh yeah.
I mean that guy that finished 8th in the league had a lower batting average than his team had for a batting average.
Yeah, I remember reading that one.
Yeah.
He was number 8 in the league. He lowered his team's batting average. It's
331. He hit 331, which is the 8th best out of 62 qualified players, but his team actually batted 337. So yeah, it brought down his team batting average. He was a liability to his team, even though he was by batting average the 8th best hitter in the league that year. That's how good their offense was.
Silly.
And then you guys have the 2 other volumes coming out. Do you have like a tentative date so far for like volume 2? I know you just released the first one, so obviously you got to give it some time to breathe.
Yeah, I think we're probably through a rough draft. We're probably about halfway through, maybe a little bit less than halfway through the second one. It probably won't take us. I mean, I wouldn't say it would take us longer than like August if we were really working hard to write and put it out. But I don't think it'll be out until the end of the baseball season this year, unfortunately, just because it just takes a while to put a book out there. It probably took longer after we had the book finalized to put it out there than it did to like write the book. So it's just, but it should be easier now that we've done it once. But we're aiming. Don't like hold us to this, but we're aiming for the end of this season, and then the third one, hopefully around this time next year, which will have the 2019 stats in it, which is kind of what we're doing. We're gonna go decade by decade, and then we decided that it wasn't gonna work out because it just worked out. So we were thinking about it, so we're gonna go like each chapter was a decade, and then each like sub chapter was a year, which would have worked perfectly. Which we really can't do it anymore. But the only reason it didn't work was because the second book we were gonna end at 1969, which is just because like the end of the decade or whatever. But like it just 1969 just baseball like historically just doesn't make sense because after 1968 was the year that like all the like the rules changed after Bob Gibson had that like 1.12 I think it was ERA. So that was really like I would say a turning point in baseball history was after 1968. So we figured it would be kind of weird to put 1969 in the same one. We decided to go year by year. But when we were first planning it was going to be decade by decade, so we wanted to include the end of the 2010s, which would have been 29. So that's why we're gonna. It'll be interesting. We're writing down notes already about the 2019 season, like saving tweets to put in the book about Cody Bellinger already.
Yeah, I mean, we could basically be down to finishing the second book probably by the end of August, but also we've been self-publishing. We did with the first one, so for two guys that have never published a book before or worked on a book before, self-publishing was it's a huge project to take on. It's not an easy situation. We learned a lot, and that'll help us with the second one. But still, there's things at the end of the book you got to just get through the process to be able to even get it to even print on Amazon. So we could be done.
You go finish that. Sorry.
Oh yeah, we could basically be done with the book by the end of August, but there's probably next to no chance it'd be out by the end of September. Just by the time we're done jumping through all the hoops.
It's crazy, yeah, because once we're done with the rough draft, we're gonna have to like everyone's gonna have to like read. We have like 5 or 6 eyes on it, like 5 or 6 sets of eyes on it, reading through it. And not only reading through it, it's hard when you're writing a book about baseball stats because you have to make sure every single one of them is like accurate. And not only like is the stat accurate, but like did I make a typo in the numbers? And like Google Docs is nice because it like underlines like typos in words, so you can find those pretty easily. But if someone had a 337 batting average and you accidentally type 331, it would not notice it. You have to look through and check all of those stats when you're done with the book to make sure you're like, was it 337 or was it 331? And it's crazy how much time that takes. We have someone that does it for us. Thank you, John Becker, if you're listening to this.
Yeah, right.
Did a lot with the stat checking. He did a lot of not only checking like the accuracy of the stats, but like just to make sure there wasn't any like typos or anything in there. Like it was crazy like how much work I'm sure he put into that just to make sure there wasn't any like numbers. And that takes a lot of time after we're done writing the book. Like we have to wait till we're done with that, and then we have to reread it, like proofread it 3 or 4 times. Like it's crazy because we want to make sure everything's accurate, and hopefully there's not any type here. But I mean, I'm sure we might have missed one or two.
So props to all the editors and the fact checkers out there, man.
Yeah,
you make people like me look good. Thanks.
Yeah, there are people reading through this book to make sure that everything's accurate. So we wanted to find the errors before they did, because I know we'll get burned because someone thinks they're really smart by saying, "Oh my God, you said 2,500 hits, but it was actually 2,700," and we're like, "Oh, like what are we gonna do about it now?" The publishing company, hey, we want to change on page 125, the third line down. We meant to say like no one cares. Like we can't do anything about it now. You don't need to check everything we say. But there are gonna be people that do that, and we haven't gotten alerted of anything yet, so that's good. But yeah.
And then what did you guys learn just writing a book? You said you self-published it. It's your first book. What did you really learn through this entire process?
It was the business aspect for sure that was hard. We just set up our own business. That was by far the hardest thing of this whole process was getting the paperwork from Washington to Chicago back to Washington. It was just the whole like setting up a bank account. Like I learned a lot. Now I know how to set up a business bank account if I ever need to do that again in my life. It was not.
I don't read books, so the biggest learning thing for me was writing a book when you don't read, and so one of my better friends, after I told them that we finished the book and published it, she made a joke, which was a little bit close to home, but now I've written more books than I've read. And that's kind of where I'm at. That was the really difficult part for me, was working on a book when I don't write books, or read books. I mean, but it's kind of as I go with Twitter. I look at it the same way. Even when I did a little bit of blogging, I really didn't read other people's stuff. I try not to follow other people's tweets when they do stats. I try to be creative in my own manner. So if I don't know what everybody else is doing, even though they're probably doing it correctly, their grammar's right, their framework on a book is correctly, well, I don't have any of that inside of me except for, what I know from my high school days and long ago. So I can just wing it. I don't have to be like everybody else. And I think that ends up bringing a little bit different quality out. So yeah, I'd say my biggest thing was learning how to read a book while I was writing it.
Yeah, also collaboration was a big thing too. Like we did this all, like I said, he didn't come to Chicago to write this book. I didn't go to Tacoma, Washington to write this book. We did this all on like Google Docs and then we had it on our typesetting company, like whatever. All of that stuff was like online. We'd like FaceTime each other call. I definitely learned a lot of like collaboration skills, I would say. Like when you're working with someone, like now it's not like a partner project in math class. It's like you're writing a 230-page book. Like you have to do it together. Like it was not like I'm over here like I wanted to keep going and I'm like I can't do it because like Jim's on vacation or whatever. I don't want to write this entire book without him because it wouldn't be good, first of all, and second of all, like it would be unfair to Jim to just do this entire thing. So I'm like having to be like patiently wait because I'm just a naturally quick worker, like I said earlier. But I definitely learned a lot of like collaboration skills. Like we have found times to go on at the same time to like make sure like we're looking at the same thing and like reading over it to make sure everything's good. But yeah, I'm definitely I feel like for the next 2 books it'll be a lot more like smooth sailing when it comes to like getting all like the kinks worked out of it. Like what time can you write tonight? Like can you call me for a couple minutes? Like I need to talk about like this one thing 83 or whatever.
Yeah, balancing personal life, work life, and writing a book also, and still being able to keep up the Twitter account and do the tweeting that I already like to do was really rough. Because I mean, I'm married. I've got a wife. I got to make sure that I'm talking to and not just ignoring. So that 40-hour-a-week job, the commute is just terrible out here in the Seattle area. So balancing time and making sure that I had enough time to do the writing and to try to meet up with Jeremy's schedule at points just so that we could talk once in a while. I mean, this podcast is almost longer than any conversation we had during writing the book. So
yeah, Jim's gonna have it coming this summer too because I'm off school now. I have all this time to write. Up with me? Nah, but it'll be fun. I'm excited to write about. I mean, I think we've gotten through I think we've gotten to World War II, so 1945, 1941-ish. I don't even know where we're at. I think that's right where we stopped, and then we realized we do this first book and cut it off in 1919. So we went and focused our attention to that book. So I think we're around 1941. But once you get past like once you're in like 10 Williams stuff, like that's when you like really know the players. Like we know Babe Ruth and we know Lou Gehrig. But once you get like 50s, 60s, like you know the players. Like the players your grandparents are talking about, the players that you've heard about, they name awards. Like it's a lot easier to write about. So I'm excited for that. I'm gonna hopefully cruise through that. But not
especially for us Yankee fans. It's the second book's going to be a beaut, right? So,
oh yeah, you got the whole 50s of just Yankees.
Yeah, the 30s, the 20s. I mean, it's going to be loaded down.
It was like calling all the years. I remember we were writing the 20s, and just like calling. Oh, can I write 1927? Can I write 1929? Like, yeah, okay, go for it, because he like has all the Yankee stats already. So I'm like,
yeah,
I'll watch it. I'll write about 1932, the one year that the Cubs actually got to the World Series.
Yeah, take 1925 when Ruth struggled. I don't need that year. You can have that one.
Babe Ruth, who?
I've never heard of that guy.
And now I'm gonna work for my co-author, so I'm gonna get my name on these 2 next books.
Yeah, okay.
I have a few stats, a few random stats in honor of you guys.
I'll write them down.
And let's see. First, I want to know if you guys know them. I only have 2 because I figured you guys know a lot more than I do about this type of stuff.
You gotta quiz us then. You can't take us for our word that we know. You gotta like read out in like a small piece of information about it and see if we know what it is. Because you can't just say like, "Oh, did you know that?" Like I'll probably say, "Yeah," just to make myself.
I do now.
All right. So the first one I found.
Okay.
So Ken Griffey Jr. has the second most hits of someone born on the same day as him, not the same year, the same day,
Okay.
and in the same town. Who is ahead
Oh.
of him?
I know this, but I forgot.
Stan the Man Musial.
Round of applause for Jim Passon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I tell you, I think Christopher Kamka reminds us every year that Ken Griffey Jr. was not the best player born that day, and also then he adds to it, it's like, he's probably not even the best person born on that day in that same town, right?
Yeah. Like I would have said I knew that stat, but like I would have known it was Stan Musial off the top of my head. Wait, but before you give me a stat here, I've got a stat for you. Going off of that, if I can find it, scrolling through my Twitter right now.
What was the town? Do you
I have it. He was born November
have
21st
that written down?
in Denora, Pennsylvania.
Okay, and I've got this other stat. So, going off of that, like beautifully segueing to the most home runs born by players that were born on one single day, like same day, same year. 970 home runs, May 27th, 1968. Can you name the two players? Probably not.
Oh, definitely not.
Jim, you know it? I've tweeted a few times before.
Oh man,
What was the year?
1968. Second place was 804 with Alex Rodriguez and Shea Hillenbrand. In third place is Barry Bonds all by himself with 762. But these two guys, born on May 27th, 1968, combined for 970 home runs.
All right. So according to my calculator, they are 51 years old.
Yep. Both of they don't play anymore, obviously. No one's 51, but they've played in my lifetime, if that helps. It probably doesn't because they're 51 and you probably knew that already.
I don't know.
You play MLB, Vince?
What?
You play MLB The Show at all?
Yeah.
Okay, one of them is a 99 overall, best hitting card in the game.
Oh, well, a 99 overall. I'm going to guess Pudge?
No.
No? All right. Frank Thomas.
Yeah, Frank Thomas. He's one of them.
Because I picked him too, and I got very disappointed with him. I can't hit with him.
I took 20 Gwynn instead, but I gave you the other one. Jeff Bagwell is the other one.
Oh.
But yeah, Frank Thomas was the first one, and Jeff Bagwell, both born on the exact same day in 1968. So I figured that your stat segued right in that. I thought it was interesting. Go for the second one. Sorry for cutting you off.
Oh, no, you're good. You got a better stat than I did. You guys at least knew my stat. So I guess I can't get a co-op on that book.
I pretended. It'll probably be in the book, too. I mean,
yeah.
I'll credit Chris Kamka or whoever was the original finder of that stat. But, yeah.
And then I have 2004 OPS from Barry Bonds. Do you know it?
No, but I know his OPS from 2000. Oh, wait, no, it was 1422. And then 2001 and 2004 was 1368, right?
No.
It wasn't 1422?
No. That might have been his 01 year. I don't know. I only have the 04 year up.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I went on Baseball Reference and I double-checked just to make sure.
You know it? Is it not 1420? Dude, I was so confident that. Was it 1479?
No, it's not 14.
Are you kidding me?
Here, I'm on Baseball Reference right now. Let me just double-check that at least I had the right number. Because if I have the wrong one, then that's really bad.
Yeah, 04, 1422.
Oh, man. Baseball Reddit has screwed me over.
What is Baseball
Reddit? What's Reddit?
Oh, man. That's what I get for not fact-checking. All right, well, then that stat is totally wrong. So good thing you guys called me out.
What's the stat? No. What was the stat?
It was what they wrote, and which I took for fact because I believe everything on the internet. Yeah. It was he had a 1.042, which I'm trying to see.
A little bit.
Right. And he had a 1.041 in each half of the season.
Oh, that's wait. Can you say that one more time?
All right, so he had a 1.042 for the entire year.
Yeah.
But if you split it by half, he has a 0.041 each half.
Do you want to hear who the original finder of that stat was?
Who?
It was me. I was actually the first person that found that.
Was that?
Yeah, it's actually funny that you said that.
Oh, man. And I butchered this stat. So
no, I think that's hilarious that you found that because I was actually just going to bring that up. But yeah, no, it's funny because, yeah, it was just some weird quirk with how like OPS math works with like the numerator and whatever
Yeah.
math or stuff that you can have. You can just have it work out that way. So I was actually looking for them a couple like last year, 2 years ago. I don't know if I was the first one to find it, but I definitely had put it on Twitter and it was pretty popular.
You're the
Yeah.
first one that told me about it.
Yeah, you got a 1421 OPS in the first half, a 1421 OPS in the second half of the season, and that adds up to a 1422.
No,
That's what he had.
Kidding. I was not the first one to find that. That was actually on an ESPN article. I'm thinking of someone else. But no, I'm not going to take credit for that because I think Sam Miller wrote about that too before I found it. But I've seen other ones like that. I think there was one with Mike Trout. He did it in 2 different years, and then but no, I was actually just kidding. I don't take credit for that stat. That inspired me to look for other ones like that. I have a list of them somewhere if I can search my Twitter for it. But
Bond stats are the best, man. I love Bond stats, man. He's still got more intentional walks than the Tampa Bay Devil Rays or the Rays, I guess, as a franchise, right?
Yeah.
We did one earlier. He had a better OPS in the final 836 games of his career than Cody Bellinger has this season in like 40 whatever game. And that was before today. I think Cody Bellinger is 0 for 3. Jim, what was your stat about Cody Bellinger?
Oh man. What did I put up? Yeah, it was like game 4 of the World Series last year. It was the last time he started a game and didn't reach base safely.
Oh yeah, I read that.
Yeah.
He's 0 for 3 right now. He's going to get one more crack at it.
Nuh-uh.
96 right now. Slacking off.
Yeah. One day, right? He started at 404, and just like that, that's how quick he can get under 400.
Yeah.
But to get above 400 is just so rough. There's no chance. What do you guys think he ends up with this year? I mean, we're almost not quite a third of the way through the season. I mean,
like
over
325 reasonable. Maybe a little higher than that.
I'm thinking like 350. He has decent protection in the lineup. He'll get on base.
It's just weird because he was never like a batting average like contact guy before this year, and he's completely changed it. He's not striking out. He's not swinging and missing at all this year. Like he used to be that one him and Judge were the two guys like strikeout or home run. Like all the old guys be like, this is how you don't play the game. And then Cody Bellinger this year is deciding to like lead the league in singles or whatever, and still like leading the league in total bases, and just he's doing everything. But yeah, I don't know if he can keep it up. I mean, his expected betting average according to Statcast is also like 400, so I guess it might be he's not getting lucky, but I don't know if it's sustainable. I would put him probably in I'd probably say like conservatively like 325, but it could be higher than that. It's just like this happened in the past. Like guys have been like 400 at this point in the season, and like some of them like you just like, oh, I didn't even know that happened. Like he finished the year like 310, but he also could finish at 390. He could finish at 410. We'll have to see.
He's already struck out more times this year than the last guy that hit 400 in a season. So
yeah,
shame. And then I have one last question for you guys. So you kind of went on it a little bit with Cody Bellinger, but who are some players that like you watch nowadays that you're like, oh my gosh, these guys, like it feels like every other day or something they're getting a random stat?
Well, it's gotta be Trout.
Trout. Oh yeah.
It's just easy. Just because his numbers, his on base percentage is always higher than everyone else's. Like last couple of years before this year was Joey Votto. Just like the quirky pop up stats. He walks a lot. Didn't strike out too much. I guess he's striking out more now. He's looked terrible this year, but before this year, Joey Votto. It's just the weird guys that are like extreme in everything. Or like extreme.
Yeah.
Like Trout's just extreme, like an extremely all around good player. Votto for him was like the extreme plate discipline. You have like the Christian Yelich's, the George Springers, who this year have been extreme power-wise. It's just easy to find stats about like extreme players, like extreme avoiding strikeouts. I think Tommy Lastello has more home runs than strikeouts this year, which is weird because he was on the Cubs last year. Didn't look like he knew how to get the ball off the ground. But happy for him. But yeah, for me, it's just the extreme players. So whoever's on a tear, like on a really good tear, a really bad tear, or just a really like weird tear, like you can be hitting 220. But if you have like one strikeout over the year, like that's a really cool stat, even if you suck.
Yeah, Aaron Judge for me, if you could just keep him healthy, the numbers that he puts up, the three true outcome guy. People like him and Joey Gallo, you can get some pretty crazy stuff.
Gallo's, I think he's leading the American League in OPS right now. But yeah, Judge, he's always the guy like he's going to get on base 400 and hit 40 homers. Like that's like a kind of a rare combination, and he's doing it like everyone's like, oh, he's overrated, like he doesn't deserve MVP. Like 400 on base and 40 home runs, no matter how popular you are, like you're a really good baseball player. It's hard to be overrated when you're putting up those kind of numbers.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
Well,
those
you're
are-
not going to get an argument from me.
I had him winning MVP in 2017. I think it was 2017. Yeah, over Altuve.
over Altuve.
Yeah, I had him too, but I'm just a biased Yankee fan, so.
Yeah.
The only non-Yankee fan I had Judge winning it, so I guess it's settled. We should overrule the MVP ruling.
Yeah, I know who my 2017 MVP still is. So
Yeah, we were actually speaking of that. I'm segueing again, but we actually we were trying to when we were starting writing this book, we were trying to pitch it to people that can like give us a quote for the cover, like a famous athlete or whatever.
Mhm.
Did not work out, but we actually wrote a couple of like recent years, like for the book. So I think did we do 2017 and 2018, Jim?
oh yeah, and then I think I threw a 1999 in there for some reason or another. So
Yeah, we said years. So I think we might actually have 2017 bunch of Aaron Judge stats already written for the book that you'll see in about a year from now.
yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for coming on.
Hey, thanks
thank
for
you
having
so
us.
I had a good time. Sorry for being a
Oh, don't worry about it. So, again, we have Jeremy Frank at MLB Random Stats on Twitter and Jim Passon Jr. at Passon Jim on Twitter. Guys, go check out this book. It's incredible. I keep it by my bedside, and I read it every night. It's kind of like my little Bible now. So go check it out on Amazon, wherever pretty much you can find a book. Hidden Ball Trick, the baseball stats you never thought to look for. Volume 1. I'm enjoying it, and I didn't think I would enjoy a dead ball era book.
Yeah, we thought it would be hard to write, but we had a good time writing it. And hope everyone who's listening has goes out of their comfort zone and learns a little bit about the history of our favorite sports. And I hope they enjoy it.
Yeah, thanks for giving this opportunity to get the word out, Vincent. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Really appreciate it.